When the president made a decision to go into Libya, our phones were ringing off the hook. Why and how are we going into Libya?
Welcome back to Hardball. That's Republican Congressman Walter Jones, one of 10 lawmakers, 3 Democrats and 7 Republicans, who today filed a lawsuit against the Obama administration for taking military action in Libya without authorization from Congress. And at the GOP debate this week, a clear theme of anti-interventionism on foreign policy came through loud and clear. Have Republicans become more dovish, or do they just want to oppose anything the President Obama, is for? U.S. Congressman Tim Johnson of Illinois is one of the 10 who filed the lawsuit against the president. Pat Buchanan's an MSNBC political analyst. Congressman, thank you so much for coming on. I guess over the years, especially during the Iraq War, the second Iraq War, we got used to the Republican Party being more hawkish than the Democratic Party, almost on both sides being knee-jerk about it. How does your position fit in with that sort of theme or that history?
Well, I have a long history, Chris, of having opposed our intervention in the Middle East. I, for example, during the Bush administration, opposed the surge, and quite frankly, still think the surge was a mistake. I have a long history, together with Walter Jones and a number of Democrats, of having been more than skeptical about a war that we can't win, that costs us lives and that costs us trillions of dollars. So this is not some Johnny-come-lately position for me. I can't speak for all my colleagues, but at least in my case, I've had a long history of having opposed what I think are failed policies.
Well, maybe you should tell your colleagues that you are in the tradition of Republican conservatism and non-involvement in areas that shouldn't involve us. Pat, that is the tradition. Barry Goldwater's tradition of Bob Taft. It goes all the way back. Sometimes it's been wrong, but generally that's been the position.
Well, it goes right back to Washington and Jefferson. We stay out of quarrels that are not where America's vital interests are not imperiled or not engaged, and we stay out of those wars. And we did so, I guess, all the way up to, you could say, the war against Spain, in which the United States grew into the greatest country on earth, while the Europeans have all been tearing themselves apart.
Yeah, let's take a look at this larger question. Let's take a look at a couple of questions, Congressman, while we have you. It seems to me that you heard all these stories about the intramurals in the Obama administration that led to us getting involved in Libya. What do you think about the case that was made that if we didn't go in there, there would be a slaughter of humanity in Benghazi, and we would be blamed like we were blamed in Rwanda for having stood aside and let that happen?
I think that case was made, but not convincingly, Chris. I believe that the case was made only very tangentially. There was no absolutism, and there was a very, very vague reference to what the ultimate result would be. So I simply believed and believe now that we can't continue to act on a variety of premises as a basis for American intervention around the world. One of the recent speakers at Congressman Paul's Thursday luncheons analogized this doctrine to the Bush doctrine of preemptive nation building. This is a preemptive humanitarian intervention. Frankly, if you ask people where these acts have occurred, they say, well, they would have occurred. Well, who knows whether they would have occurred, but in any event, there are over 200 countries around the world, and most of them don't share our principles of democracy, humanitarianism, and otherwise. And it's just simply not possible, manpower-wise or financially, to act as the world's policeman.
Well, let's take a look at Mitt Romney. He's the front runner right now on the Republican side. Here is on Afghanistan, and Michelle Bachmann on Libya at that big debate this week. Let's listen to both.
It's time for us to bring our troops home as soon as we possibly can. But I also think we've learned that our troops shouldn't go off and try and fight a war of independence for another nation. Only the Afghanis can win Afghanistan's independence from the Taliban.
Congresswoman Bachmann, should the president have joined initially more U.S. presence, but now a NATO operation? Was that the right thing to do? Is that in the vital national interest of the United States of America?
No, I don't believe it is. Our policy in Libya is substantially flawed. First of all, we were not attacked. We were not threatened with attack. There was no vital national interest.
You know, it's interesting, gentlemen and congressmen especially. I'll start with Pat, because you're well known as a non-interventionist guy. You're a paleo-conservative. You're not a neoconservative. And I'm just thinking, 4 years ago, as we watched the debates, every time Ron Paul made a non-interventionist comment about one of these wars overseas, he was booed down and ridiculed by Rudy Giuliani. And the whole room would mock him. That seems to have been a total change in the mood this time on overseas involvement.
You're exactly
What's happened
right,
in 4 years? Is it just that we have a Democratic president?
But Ron Paul, remember when they had the phone-in polls after the debates? All of a sudden, Fox News, what's going on? Ron Paul won the poll. There's been a tremendous and a growing anti-interventionist mood in the Republican Party. It goes back to Bob Taft, goes back to Barry Goldwater. Yeah. But you're exactly right, Chris. Notice last night, people listened to Ron Paul respectfully to his opinion, and all of them are moving toward
Okay, let me go to the Congressman. Your colleague Ron Paul was a voice in the wilderness as a non-interventionist, not a neocon. He was a paleocon, an old traditional conservative. Why is he now more in fashion, even with Mitt Romney joining in that chorus?
It's amazing how things evolve. I spoke in support 2 weeks ago of the Kucinich resolution and supported our immediate withdrawal. I made this challenge to Republicans, Democrats. To my Republican colleagues, I made this point. I challenge them to understand that if they're serious about debt reduction, that you can't take things off the table, including defense. When we've had now in excess of trillions of dollars expended in the Middle East and you have to balance the budget, those are counterintuitive. Right. And I made the challenge to my Democratic friends that if they are opposed to war and the loss of innocent lives and American men and women, that is just as applicable to an Obama administration as this is.
I want to ask the lightning round question. Congressman, real quickly, would Ronald Reagan have taken us into Iraq in 2003?
Absolutely not. Absolutely
not. No, he
not.
would not have taken us into Iraq. He used military force 3 times. Grenada took about a day. He took out Libya and he attacked Libya.
Well, you have another problem.
And then he put the Marines in Lebanon, and then he said it was the worst mistake I ever made. He would not use military force unless American vital interests were imperiled.
In Esquire magazine, John Huntsman, another new kid on the block joining the campaign next Tuesday, says of Afghanistan, if you can't define a winning strategy, an exit strategy for the American people where we somehow come out ahead, then we're wasting our money and we're wasting our strategic resource. Boy, there is a Congressman, again, to you first. That is an astoundingly strong statement for a guy who's only entering the campaign now and trying to get his footing.
Absolutely. The whole dynamics have changed. They haven't changed for me and Walter Jones and Dennis Kucinich. They've changed for a lot of other people.
Let me tell you why they've changed. A couple of reasons, Chris.
Well, the war's gotten long.
6,000 dead, right. 40,000 wounded, $1 trillion invested. Secondly, we're broke. We can't fight these wars anymore. We're borrowing money from Europe to defend Europe, borrow money from Japan to defend Japan, borrow money from the Gulf states to defend the Gulf states. It is over.
I can't wait to read the Republican platform next year and see if you guys are anti-war after all, or if you're hawkish again. Thank you, Congressman. I think the Iraq war has not sold well. Tim Johnson and Pat Buchanan, thank you very much, Congressman. Please come back.